USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Edge for Friday, March 22nd, 2024. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin. And gentlemen, everything comes down to this weekend. 4,096 possible combinations going into the weekend. After Friday's games, down to 32 possible combinations to see who makes it to the NCAA tournament. And we're going to take a look at each of the league championship rounds. It's going to start out with the semifinals for three leagues and then finals for the other three who have determined which two teams will play for the league title. So why don't we start out with Hockey East? There are two games in that one, UMass versus Boston College and Maine versus Boston University. Let's start with UMass and BC. UMass is plus 195, Boston College minus 260 with an over-under of 6.
Probably where I expected the line to be. There's these odds makers are still going to be hammering Boston College. They believe that they are a heavy favorite in this tournament. And even when we get to Saturday night, regardless of the opponent if they make it to Saturday, I think they'll still be a heavy favorite. That's just the depth I think that people are putting behind Boston College right now. I do feel like there's value on UMass. I do feel like they're playing well, maybe playing their best hockey of the year. Would I bet them? No. I do like the over on the over-under of 6. You're going to push a lot of the times on that one. These two teams can score. So I do think that we're probably going to see a few goals in this game. I know we've talked about it on our Monday podcast, Ed, that we saw a lot of low-scoring games last week. This is just one. Actually, both of these Hockey East games are ones where I kind of see as exceptions, maybe, and we'll see some scoring. I don't think we'll get a 2-1 game. Maybe you get a 3-2 and you lose it if you get a 3-2 game. But at least with the 3-2 game, if it's not overtime, you always have the chance of an empty netter. So that would be a push. So I kind of like staying away from the actual money line bet right now. I much prefer to maybe go for the over-under.
I kind of go back and forth on this, which is that Boston College has not looked like the over dominant, powerhouse Boston College team that we saw maybe a month ago. And I feel that that's kind of the case, just that they're still really, but they still found ways to win games, I guess what I'm trying to say. So even though they're not playing up to the standard that we would have hoped, which would have been pounding teams left and right and going up 3-0, 4-0 and blowing teams out of the water like they were around the Beanpot ish with the specifically coming out of the BU weekend, I still feel that you can't bet against them because they are finding ways to win games despite not playing up to their quote standard. That said, UMass is a team that's playing exceptionally well. I think plus 195 is a juicy odd if you believe in what UMass can do. And truthfully, I know I said it when UMass played BC and they were talking about rushing the ice at the Mullins and all that other stuff. Is what I'm sitting here saying is you can't look at UMass and say nobody believes UMass can win this game, even though I just said I still don't see them winning this game, because UMass has been to the mountaintop in this particular situation. They have won at the Garden. They have won a national championship. They are a team that has a pedigree to win this game, which is why I wouldn't feel comfortable even betting it at all. I like the over-under. I like it as 6. 6 is a good number. 6 with the option to push is something I grab in. But I'm staying away from the money line because I don't like the way BC has played, but I also don't feel comfortable betting against BC. And the big part for me is if Gabe Perreault's playing. If he's back and he's in, now BC's a lot deeper, and UMass, despite playing hot, this could be a great hockey game regardless.
Yeah, and by the way, we always throw away that term pizza money. Every one of these games this week, you have the prop of picking the exact score. And if you were to pick the exact score, say you believe this is going to be a 4-2 game, in favor of BC. Trying to find that one on here. Yeah, it looks like that's plus 1,700. So you want to throw $50 down or $20 down on that, you have a really good return if you hit. Again, that's just a real fun bet to make. All of these games this weekend, as far as I can see, it looks like DraftKings has that prop available. So a lot of fun you can have with that one.
Only because I know this would absolutely ruin your night on Friday is if the first game goes deep into an overtime.
So
Like
shut up. Shut up.
So I would look at a 60-minute tie bet. Like I would look at that on the I hate Jim Connelly bet and lay that one down with your pizza money too.
We had every single game in this tournament went to overtime last year, including a double overtime semifinal and the second semifinal on Friday. We got out of the Garden at 1:00. I don't want to do that again.
No, nobody wants that. So that's why I'm saying if you really don't like the things that we have said over the course of the year, find that 60-minute draw and go after it.
Well, one other thing to add to this, and I know every team wants to win every game, and especially when it's a league championship, but winning the game for UMass then will cement them into the NCAA tournament. A loss means things have to fall their way. More scenarios fall their way than not, but still they would have to sit and wait until all the games were done on Saturday night to know if they were in.
It's certainly motivation. And I talked to Greg Carvel a little bit this week about it. He said, listen, we haven't talked to our team about that. We've never brought up pairwise ones all season. He said, but am I naive to believe that these kids are on social media and know exactly what they have to do to get in the tournament? He's like, absolutely. I know that they do. So yeah, it's a motivation. Maybe BC doesn't have that motivation. They're locked into the number 1 overall seed. They have been for a couple of weeks now. But I still look at this and say, I still can't bet against Boston College.
You know what's the funny thing, and this is the last thing that just to add on this game for me is if you're looking at teams that know how to win in the postseason, is that BC hasn't played in this type of game for years. They haven't played at the Garden in a conference championship situation for a while. UMass has. So that's something else to kind of lock into your handicapping. I mean, BC is still BC, but
they played the Beanpot, which probably
they didn't play the Beanpot championship in the after that BU game. So they did get the Beanpot game against BU. But I'm sitting here saying like the Hockey East, the 4 p.m. Like I don't know. Like there is still if you're looking for an edge in there, that's something to throw in there.
Yeah, but we're not talking about pro teams, and half the players are freshmen. So I don't know that makes that much of a difference.
Yeah. I agree with you.
So, and Greg Brown's been there as an assistant and now as a head coach.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something, maybe for an extra topping on that pizza money. Well, let's look at the other half of Hockey East. And man, this is going to be a great game. Maine and BU. Maine is plus 160. BU is minus 210. The over-under on this one is also 6.
Yeah, I feel like BU has been a team I've kind of faded a lot this season, and I've failed every time I have. Maybe the BC BU series. That was the only time that really BU didn't shut me up when I've talked about them. But I do love Maine, and in Maine, the question for Maine was, can they do it? Can they do it? Where are they? Are they falling apart down the stretch? Well, a 5-0 win last Saturday night against New Hampshire in the quarterfinals certainly answered a lot of questions, albeit that game was at home. But there's a part of me that feels like the 7:30 game at TD Garden on Friday night is going to feel like a home game for Maine. They will have thousands of fans there. If they were half the building for the entire weekend, I would not be surprised. That's how much demand there is for the tickets for the fans coming down from Maine. It's been a long time. They have not been to the TD Garden in 12 years, which for a team that was, literally just expected to be there year after year under Sean Walsh and for many of the years under Tim Whitehead, that's a long time. They probably would have gotten there in 2020 if, of course, they canceled the tournament. But I like Maine here. I like the over here just for the same reasons I did in the BC game. I just feel like this is the one tournament out there that I feel like there's going to be there's going to be a lot of goals scored at Hockey East. I don't know if we can say that all around the country this weekend, but at the Hockey East tournament, I feel like we're going to have goals.
I'm going to make the joke. They're going to have all those Maine fans. It's going to feel like a Maine home game, and BU's the only team that's actually from Boston that'll be playing in the building. But
that's really only funny to you, Dan.
I know. I know. But listen, we're recording early in the morning, and the coffee hasn't quite hit the bloodstream yet, so I'm going to give all my bad jokes. I think there's one last piece of this for Maine, which is I go back to those games that were the 1-goal losses at BU back in November. And I know you can't compare games at this point compared to the way things were in November, but they just feel like a team that could do some really special things again. They had their lull with the Providence in the UNH series. I think when you look at the way they're playing, and plus don't forget, we're talking about value, we're talking about bets. When you're looking at BU and you're looking at -210, I don't think you're going to get the value against a team that's playing as well as Maine is right now, when Maine is sitting around +160. I don't like this as a bet for BU in general. So I like the over. I like Maine. This is a good Maine team that has started to find its stroke. And I really do think a lot of it too is going to be who gets out hot and who gets out quickly in the beginning. Because if that first game does take a while, and I'm not saying overtime, I'm saying like if the game just bleeds closer to the 7:30 start time, 7:00, it bleeds closer to 3 hours. It's going to be about who can get dressed and who can get warm quicker in the second half of the semifinal.
Well, let's turn to the ECAC. They're up at Lake Placid. There are 2 semifinal games. The early game has St. Lawrence taking on Quinnipiac. The over-under on this one is 5.5. The odds very long, 400 plus 400 for St. Lawrence, -620 for Quinnipiac.
Again, this is kind of my pizza money area again. I wouldn't put a huge bet on St. Lawrence, but you can make some money. Listen, we know the story. Quinnipiac has not played well in Lake Placid for whatever reason it is. Only one championship, despite the fact that they've been one of the most dominant regular season teams in the ECAC for more than a decade now. And only one time have they left Lake Placid with the trophy. So, and I'm not even sure, I can't even remember if it was Lake Placid when they played. That's how infrequent it is that they've had success. So I expect Quinnipiac to win. I've said it, but I expected them to beat Colgate last year in this exact same scenario, and they lost. So, St. Lawrence seems to be playing really well right now. So I look at this one, I think if St. Lawrence wins, that's where you're going to see the low scoring game. So if you like St. Lawrence and the under seem to be a great way to go.
Which is funny because the over under of 5.5 feels like it's going to be hard to hit in general. But I agree. And the biggest thing for me in this, in terms of a pizza money bet on St. Lawrence, is that Ben Cross, in a hot goalie, can make a team a championship level team, and he's been all over the map. Miami to Arizona, to Arizona State, to here with St. Lawrence to round out his career. I look at a guy like him and against Quinnipiac, and my biggest thing is Quinnipiac makes goaltenders great with the way they play in front, and they have a good goalie in Vinny Duplessis, but a great goaltender can make a team win. And I think that's one of the things that over the years has been exposed on Quinnipiac a bit, in the losses to Brown over the year that I've seen. It's been like, okay, when you have to start shortening your bench and you can't play the quote system that you might want to, does that cost you along the way? It didn't in the national championship last year. I think they played phenomenal in the entire tournament and were able to play with their style the whole time. But a hot goalie and a good goalie can beat a team that is a good team that plays and makes its goalie better. A good goalie becomes great at Quinnipiac, but a great goalie can beat them. And I think that's one of the things that makes this an intriguing game to watch. Now, having said that, there is something on the line for Quinnipiac in this, which is we talked about it a couple weeks ago with the seeding. They can't lose this game. They can't drop down to a 3 because then you start losing the first change. Then you start losing, or last change. I mean, then you can't lose, being the quote home team, getting a favorable seed somewhere along the line in the tournament. I think they are one of the best teams at managing that and managing the mentality of saying, we need to win this to stay at a 2 seed. And this way we can get last change and maybe play closer to home than we would if we're a 3 seed being sent somewhere else. I do think they'll wind up in a localized regional anyway, but the 3 seed versus the 2 seeds kind of is a big deal for the way that they play.
The other half of the bracket has Dartmouth facing Cornell. Over under on this one is a 5. Dartmouth is plus 300. Cornell is minus 425. Cornell's a lot more favored in this than I thought they might be.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ed. I didn't think that they would be that heavy of a favorite. And going back to Dan's 60-minute line, plus 380 to be a tie and go to overtime. These two teams played 2 games this year. They were both 2-2 ties. It's going to be low scoring, 2-1, 3-1, 3-2 tops. I don't see 5-4 here at all. Or at least that's the way I would have to handicap this. And then I think there's value on Dartmouth. I just feel like they're playing some good hockey right now. Not that Cornell isn't right there. They know, and Mike Schaefer is very good at getting his team prepared for games that mean something. And every one of these games keep their hopes of an NCAA bid alive. They need to win their tournament to get in, but they're still in it, and that's part of it. So I don't mind taking Dartmouth on a smaller bet, over under. Don't even care about it, but I like that 60-minute line. Plus 330 is a pretty good value.
I love Dartmouth. I love them as a team. I love the way they play. I love the fact that that's a team that I used the line this week in the weekly column, and I actually said this to a good friend of the program, Ken Schott. But I said this to Ken this week too, and I said, every time I look at Dartmouth, everyone likes to say, why is Dartmouth going to win this? Why not? That's the way they've played the whole year. It's not even, why is Dartmouth good enough to win a championship? Why aren't they good enough to win a championship? They've done a really good job of not losing games this year and pushing to overtime, pushing teams into tie situations, not losing leads, coming from behind. Those are all things that they do exceptionally well. They are going to face what I think is the best player in the league in Ian Shane, but Dartmouth has a good goal scorer, good defenseman, good goaltender who is absolutely enormous in Cooper Black. I mean, the guy is a monster of a human being. And I think that there is something to be said for what Dartmouth has accomplished this year, just to say, why not them? Like, that's I love the under. I love this being low scoring. I love this not being a lot of shots. I think both teams kind of counterattack. So I would look at this. I will say though, Dartmouth's last trip to an ECAC championship game, you ready for this one? 1980 at the Boston Garden against Cornell. And the 8th seed Cornell, which finished second in the Ivy region, beat the 3rd seed Dartmouth, which finished first in the Ivy region, 5-1. And that was in a 3-division ECAC. That's how long it's been since Dartmouth played for an ECAC championship, and they have never won it. So again, why not? Why not?
And that 3-division predating the split to Hockey East. That's why so many divisions.
And there's one other crazy point that you can make here. Should Dartmouth win their 2 games and get into the NCAA tournament, they would be a 15-win team in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Don't see that very often. I mean, they also have the same number of losses as they do ties. So getting there, they would be 15-9-9, which is still pretty respectable. But imagine a 15-win team in the NCAA tournament. It reminds me of the old CCHA where Alabama Huntsville would finish last place and always find a way to win the tournament and get in.
Well, let's turn to the third league with semis and finals this weekend, and that's the NCHC. The first game we've got, the early game is going to be Omaha taking on North Dakota. Omaha plus 200. Nodak minus 270. The over-under on this one is 6.
Yeah, this line probably could have been closer to what we saw, maybe with Cornell Dartmouth, except for the fact that Omaha beat North Dakota twice recently. And those, I think, stick in the heads of the odds makers. I don't really have a preference here. I think that this will be a big revenge weekend for North Dakota. I expect North Dakota to win the NCHC championship. I think they will find a way. Brad Berry's one of those coaches that he doesn't let it get stuck in his head. Oh, we can't beat this opponent. And he'll make sure that his team is ready for this game. But it is an intriguing semifinal when you really think about it. Another one with the 60-minute line. If you think this one might go to overtime, as this is kind of want to do, plus 320 on the 60-minute draw. So that's another thing to consider.
One thing about the NCHC is that I feel like the league in general, we've talked about how evenly played and how good some of these teams are. But then at the end of the day, I look at North Dakota and Denver, and I just see two teams that are head and shoulders better suited to play in the postseason. So I love Omaha. I love what they did against Colorado College, rallying to win to the last two games on the road, winning those two games too. Up in the altitude, there's no shame in losing to North Dakota after you beat them twice. You got yourself in a position to make a run at the NCAA tournament. So, but North Dakota knows this is what they've been assembled to do. They've been assembled to play for an NCHC championship, and to me, that's and go further. So for me, kind of keeping in line with that, it's put up time for North Dakota, and for that, it makes it very hard for me to look at the odds and say, yeah, you should take Omaha here. Like I think if it were longer odds, maybe a plus 270, I'd look in heavily on Omaha, but I don't like them at plus 200.
The other half of the bracket in the Frozen Face-Off has St. Cloud State taking on Denver. St. Cloud State is plus 170. Denver minus 220, over under is 7. Is this one of them that maybe is a little closer than we might have expected?
Yes, 100%. I would have thought that Denver would have been a little bit closer to minus 270. And St. Cloud probably more like plus 210. High over under 7. That's pretty high. That's the highest one we've talked about thus far. And, when I look at the St. Cloud team, they should be desperate. They have to win just to have hopes of getting in. A win on Friday night will not lock up their NCAA berth. But they lose this game, they're out. So they're one of those few teams that are really close to the bubble, but still on the outside looking in. They have work to do. So you could kind of count on a little bit of motivation there for St. Cloud, much like we've said for some of the other teams that we've gone through here, Cornell being one of them. But I still think that Denver's the better team. Dan said it, like Denver is, in North Dakota, those two teams in the NCHC just feel like they're head and shoulders above everybody else. And they've felt like since November that they've been destined to meet in the NCHC final.
Yeah. And if I were to pick a semifinal upset, it wouldn't have been St. Cloud. St. Cloud has not played particularly well against Denver this year. I know they had the tie, the 4-4 tie, but Denver hunted St. Cloud in the first game, and then you go back to even the one a few weeks ago at the beginning of March, and they scored 13 goals against St. Cloud. So I don't see this being. I mean, it is hard to beat a team as often as Denver is going to have to beat St. Cloud in a given season. But again, Denver was assembled to play North Dakota for the NCHC championship and then potentially find each other again later on down the line.
I got to feel like if there's one team in all of them we're talking about on this episode that has a chip on its shoulder, it's St. Cloud.
Probably. Didn't have the greatest non-conference schedule in results this year. They started out really hot in the NCHC. They started to fall apart down the stretch. All of those things are should be motivating factors. And so I like the way you put a chip on their shoulder. They should have something there. They don't feel like they've probably gotten the respect they deserve. Whether it's, and you look at how successful the NCHC is in the pairwise, and they're sitting there saying, hey, we played really good hockey and we're still on the outside looking in. So yeah, there probably is a little chip on their shoulder.
Yeah. And a few bad bounces have gone against them down the stretch. Well, we're going to pause, and when we come back, we'll look at the 3 championship games that are already lined up. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Where are my hockey fans at? Present! Welcome to Fandom 101. It's NCAA Ice Hockey Championship time, when the hottest teams in the country face off under one roof. Be there to see your squad hoist the ultimate trophy overhead. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th in St. Paul, Minnesota. Attendance is encouraged. Passion is mandatory. Buy your seats today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
Welcome back to USCHO Edge. We're going to look at the Lone Friday Championship game, and that's in the CCHA where Michigan Tech visits Bemidji State. Almost a pick 'em, -105 for Michigan Tech, -125 for Bemidji State. Over under is 5.5.
Yeah, it should be a pick 'em. I feel like this one is up for grabs. I know that Bemidji's played unbelievable hockey down the stretch. I get it, but so has Michigan Tech. And Joe Sean has gotten his team back into position to potentially win their first CCHA championship here. And you have to think the motivation will be there. I think that Bemidji is a great team. They're going to score goals. They'll get good goaltending. But I think this is the type of game that I see 2-2 the entire way. Maybe late in regulation, you get a goal. Maybe in overtime, you get a goal. But this is not going to be a 5-1 game to me. This will be a 1-goal game the whole way. And I love the thought of 3-2 in overtime. And I didn't say which team.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm not even going to attempt to pick them on it because it should be a pick 'em. And that's what the CCHA has been all year, has been a pick 'em, evenly played games. I don't think this is a league that's going to be. It's fortunate that it is a one bid league because of the way that that we look at these teams over the course of a year and some of the bigger, more profile teams. But good hockey in the CCHA. I think this is a great way to force these two teams even to kick it up another notch in the way that they play their game. Like knowing that you don't have anything to fall back on for either one of these teams, that they have to win to get in, that this feels like an NCAA tournament game already. It has for the entire postseason with the CCHA. I don't know how to pick it. I do feel the same way. I think this could be one of those 3-2 games that winds up being 4-2 and splits on the over under and goes over. But I love this game. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I mentioned that prop that you can put a prop on what the score will be. It's a 60-minute prop, by the way. It's not so if you have a tie, that's one of the outcomes. The most likely outcome based on the odds, 2-2, and that is plus 900. If you can through 60 minutes get 2-2, that is the most likely outcome. There are some other scores in there, that are possible as well. 3-2 for Bemidji. That's a regulation score. That's plus 1,800. But by far, 2-2 and 3-3 are the two most likely outcomes according to DraftKings.
And Michigan Tech were cardiac kids against St. Thomas, scoring late to tie it, and then with seconds ticking off the clock, winning the game there at St. Thomas. So I don't think there's anybody afraid to play things right to the buzzer in that 60-minute game. So that's going to be a fun one. And fortunately, it's on Friday night. So if you're looking at Saturday championship games to watch, you can catch that one on Friday. Well, talking about teams that have to play to get in, let's go to Atlantic Hockey where the situation is the same. American International will play at RIT. The building will be banged out. It sold out within 2 hours when tickets went on sale Monday morning. AIC is plus 140. RIT is minus 180. Over under on this one is 6.
I just have to go with the home team here. I know that AIC has some great experience winning some of these big games, but I have to go with the home team. RIT has been a really good home team this season. Even at 180, I think that's a fair price, a manageable price. It's not too over the top. and I expect this is one where I actually expect RIT not to win handily, but to handle the game well. I could see this being a 4-2 game where they have at least a 2-goal lead for most of the game. That's just my thought. I don't know if I'd touch the over under. If I did, I'd be going over with it. But this is one I think RIT should be able to handle.
In the 60-minute line, 4-2 is the most likely outcome of all of them on the lines there. So you and the odds makers are thinking the same way.
Boy, I'm nailing these today. I hadn't even looked at that one. 16-1, the odds on 4-2 happening. That is the most likely line through 60 minutes.
I think the one thing, and I realize I'm about to be the guy who plays devil's advocate again, that I think is going to be a key in here is what happens and how tight the game is called. Because when you look at the numbers, RIT has a statistical advantage where it matters most, which is they score more. They score about a goal more than AIC does in games, and RIT is a better offense, similar defensive numbers, similar across the board. The difference to me comes in penalties, which is that RIT gets whistled for about a penalty to a penalty and a half more per game than RIT does. The penalty kill at RIT or RIT gets penalized more than AIC does. RIT's penalty kill is phenomenal. But when you start getting into a championship game, if you're in the third period, you're in one of those situations, if the wrong call comes down at the wrong time, it can prolong, at least if your offense can't score in a particular situation, takes away those 2 minutes. It puts the other team, maybe flips a bit of the momentum when they have the opportunity to change and get the right personnel on. You still have the last change, but to me, that's kind of the one thing just to keep an eye on is, can RIT stay out of the box? If that one penalty becomes a difference, if that difference becomes the difference, then that's where it starts to factor into how I would look at this game. I would stay away from the over-under. This could very easily be a 1-goal game. That's 2-1. This could very easily be this is Atlantic hockey at its absolute best. This could be an absolute shootout, and this winds up being a 7-5 game. Everything's on the table as far as I'm concerned right now with these two teams.
One thing I know is if AIC is down late, they will pull their goaltender early.
Yes.
That's interesting for the over.
Yes.
That could easily push this game over. So I would not even look at the under here. If you're going to bet the over-under, go with the over.
Well, we got one more game, and boy, is this one that I think everybody who is a college hockey fan should be waiting for. If you're not, we may have to call back your college hockey fan card, and that is Michigan at Michigan State. What a rivalry. Michigan State has never won the Big Ten championship. Michigan is looking for its 4th and 3rd in a row. Michigan is plus 114, Michigan State minus 145, and the over-under is a gaudy 7.
I get that over-under. These teams played some really high-scoring games in the regular season, but I think that'll actually tighten up. I see this as like a 3-2 type of game. And I wouldn't count out Michigan. That's kind of what the bookmakers are saying. The odds makers at plus 114. Why not, in concept, give Michigan a more than a fighting chance? It's on the road. I get it, but Michigan hasn't been a bad road team this year. So I love this game. Do I know where to bet it? No. I'd probably go for the value with Michigan and the experience. There's a lot of players on this team that played in the past Big Ten championship games and have won it. They seem to find a way, no matter who the coach is behind the bench, they seem to find a way to win. So I just really like Michigan here. Michigan State, could they absolutely pull it off 100%? And for Adam Nightingale and everything that's been happening in Lansing this season, you kind of want to see that. It would be an exciting way to end the Big Ten season. But I wouldn't bet against Michigan if my life depended on it.
No, and I will say this: we said Michigan State has never won the Big Ten, right? I know they won the CCHA back when they won the national championship.
No.
They've never. Well, it ain't gonna change today.
They've won the CCHA, but not the national championship year.
Right.
Yeah.
They won the CCHA, I think it was 06. They won the national title in 07. They've never won the Big Ten. I don't think it's going to change. I don't think that's changing. Let's put it that way. I am so confident in saying this that I will stake this would be, I don't say locks. Michigan is going to win the Big Ten, and Michigan is going to win the Big Ten with probably a little bit more ease than we're giving credit to. And I realize that's taken away from what Michigan State has accomplished. I don't want to do that. I think Michigan State, very good team, very good, everything across the board. I think they are, I think they could, very easily go out and win this game. So I'll correct myself, but I said, I'm going to ride Michigan until proven otherwise. And I think I said that last week. And I said a couple months ago that I wasn't betting on Michigan until Michigan proved that it could win some of these games. They needed to have more of a resume, get them into the tournament, whatever it was that I felt they were benefiting from the Big Ten and the pairwise. I remember it was on this pod. They've done it. They're in. They're that good. They're going to win the Big Ten. The last 5 wins that they've had have been 1-goal games. This is a second half team that I think is going to be awesome. And I am all in with Michigan in this game. I'm riding it. I want somebody, if this doesn't happen, I want someone to tweet at me and call me a complete moron. But when it happens, I will turn around and I will say, I told you also.
Whoa. You have not been so confident about any game we've talked about at all season.
All season.
All season. I am going to pick the last game of the conference championship weekend podcast to say it is all Michigan. I'm all in with Go Blue. I'm all in.
So you're saying Jacob Barczewski gets conference championships with 2 different teams in consecutive seasons? Yes,
but I'm also saying it in a sense that he is not going to be the reason that they win this game. I think this is going over. No offense to him, and I'm not saying that because I'm pretty sure he eliminated Bentley with Canisius one year. I think Michigan is just going to look. I think this game's going over. I think this is going to be a 5-4 game, but I think this is, or one of those. I think this could, I know it hasn't happened in the postseason for Michigan yet. I know that, but it just beat Minnesota 2-1. They beat Notre Dame 4-3 and 5-4. They go back. They beat Minnesota in overtime. They beat Notre Dame again. Like even rolling back, they beat Penn State. They're doing it. Like this is the team to beat right now in the Big Ten. They're going to win it all. They're going to win the Big Ten. There you go.
Dan does make one good point, Jim, because like 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were talking about whether Michigan was even going to make the tournament.
Right. And now here they are. They're in the tournament. I'm not as confident as Dan on them. I still believe Michigan State has a pulse here, and more than a pulse, they have a real, fighter's chance to win on home ice. But I said, I don't bet against Michigan in a situation like this. You put them in a league championship game, I will bet on them every time. I'm not hammering things and standing on a pulpit and asking to be called out when I'm wrong, because I don't feel that confident. But I still do have a lot of confidence in what is going on with Brandon Naurato and this team down the stretch. I think Michigan should be the team that wins this.
So here's the summary of what Dan said. It's a hockey team's worth of pizzas after the game that he's putting on Michigan.
I'm going back into now, when I grew up, the Michigan M, the blue and gold, that was all over Malden, back in Malden, when my dad was coaching soccer. I might go back and try and dust off some of like the old sweatshirts that had the Michigan M on it, come out singing Hail to the Victors. I could be, that's how far in I am on Michigan in this game, which is absolutely why they are going to lose this game 6-0.
Well, with that, we'll wrap for today. Enjoy the hockey this weekend. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th, 2024 at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. For Jim Connelly, for Dan Rubin, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Edge.